What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Canadian Football Fantasy Fix for Week 4 of the 2021 CFL season. I'm back with your first game day of the week depth chart and injury report update. Yes, Week 4 kicks off tonight between the Hamilton Tiger Cats and the Montreal Alouettes. We've got depth charts out for that game. We've got depth charts for the Saturday game between BC and Ottawa. And no depth charts out today yet, but we do have some injury reports for Winnipeg and Calgary on Sunday. So let's go through all of those to help get you set your lineup. First game of the week kicks off tonight, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, between the Alouettes and the Ticats. Let's take a look at the Ticats depth chart first, and a lot of notable changes, or I guess maybe, well, no, not notable changes, notable omissions this week for the Ticats. We thought maybe they'd get some guys back from injury coming out of their bye week, but it looks like they are still going to be missing some pieces. At quarterback, Dane Evans gets the start. Jeremiah Mazzoli a little banged up after that game against Saskatchewan in week 2. So they go to Dane Evans to try to right the ship and get the offense back on board this week. At quarterback, at running back, Sean Thomas Erlington starts once again. Don Jackson not quite back from injury yet, so expect Thomas Erlington to get the bulk of the carries, we would assume, for the Ticats run game. At wide receiver, still no Braylon Addison, still no DeVere Posey, still no Marcus Tucker. I really thought we were going to see some of these guys back this week, but it is the crew of Brandon Banks and Jalen Acklin. Looks like they're going to have to carry the heavy load here once again this week for the Ticats. You've got a couple other, rookie receivers in there. You've got David Unger the third. I don't know if he's necessarily a rookie still. He's got about 12, 13 career starts. Tim White made his first start last week, and you've got Stephen Dunbar Jr. Starting his first game of the year at wide receiver in place of Pappy White, who started last week. So some notable omissions there from your fantasy-wise on offense. They're also missing Chris Van Zyl on the offensive line, so a shaky O-line so far this year. Much like that first game against Winnipeg, they're missing definitely one of their biggest leaders. So this might be another rough day for the Ticats offense. I think Dane Evans has a bit of an uphill battle here. You're facing a great defensive pass rush in the Alouettes and missing a lot of notable receivers. So personally, given all of this, I'm staying away from Dane Evans this week at quarterback. He comes in over $9,000. I think there's, you're not saving a ton of money like you would with a $5,000 quarterback. So I stay away from him because there's a lot of better options, I think, with similar price points. And same thing, wide receiver. If you watched the wide receiver preview, I hyped up Jalen Acklin quite a bit once again, and there was some concern maybe he loses some targets with the other guys back in the lineup. But with no Addison, with no Posey, Jalen Acklin should be one of the top 2 targets for Dane Evans this week. They're going to try to get Brandon Banks going. Montreal is going to try to shut him down. So look to Jalen Acklin perhaps to lead the way again, much like he did with an outstanding fantasy performance in week number 1. He comes in around $5,600. I really like Acklin as a pick once again for week number 3. Looking at the defense for Hamilton, notable omission. Jagarrett Davis will not be there along the defensive line after breaking COVID protocols this week. He has to sit this game out. So the pass rush, for the Ticats, maybe not as fearful as it typically is with him missing, but they do get a couple notable pieces in Cariel Brooks and Tunde Adeleke back in the secondary, which should help the Ticats there in that regard. Looking at the Alouettes side of things, the lineup seems to be pretty much the same as it has been for the past 2 games. At quarterback, you've got Vernon Adams Jr. Running back, you've got William Stanback. Wide receivers, Eugene Lewis, BJ Cunningham, Jake Weineke, Quan Bray, and Keon Julian Grant, with Mario Alford at the return slot, at kick returner. this should be a pretty efficient day, I think, for Montreal's offense. I think they're going to be out on the field quite a bit this game. I think their defense is very strong. Hamilton's offense is looking shaky. And Montreal can, control the ball and run the ball very well. So I expect a lot of rushing yards from William Stanback. I'll project it right now that he's going over 100 yards on the ground. And we'll see if he gets involved in the passing game yet, too, and maybe gets in for a score. That would be very nice from a fantasy perspective if you can get that out of William Stanback. And then, of course, Vernon Adams Jr., always a mobile quarterback. If you're trying to run the ball in your Montreal, maybe we see him picking up a solid number of rushing yards there as well. Defensively, same thing. No notable changes. Armando Sewell, Antonio Simmons, Woody Barron, and Nick Usher on the defensive line. You've also got Chris Aki and Patrick Levels in the linebacker slots, and a great slew of defensive backs there. So I really like things all Alouettes this week. I think that I'm definitely in this matchup favoring Montreal pretty heavily at this point. Granted, to be fair, my pick'em record is not fantastic this year, so I wouldn't be surprised if Hamilton comes out with strong performance and wins coming out of the bye week. But from a fantasy perspective, I love Montreal's defense. I love a lot of their receivers this week. William Stanback seems like a very clear choice at running back, and Vernon Adams Jr. is definitely a leading quarterback option. Getting into the Saturday game between BC and Ottawa, let's start with Ottawa. Matt Nichols back at quarterback once again. Not too much of a surprise there. I know there's some people saying, well, we should give Dom Davis a chance. Look, I'm not going away from Matt Nichols yet. The offense as a whole hasn't gotten a lot going. I think they will start to gel a little more efficiently as the season goes along. They're a young offense. They're missing a lot of their usual pieces on the offensive line, which hasn't helped. But they will get one of them back this week. Nolan McMillan missed last game against Saskatchewan, and I think the O-line missed him desperately. He will be back this week to lead that unit, which should give a little bit more protection for Matt Nichols. And maybe, helps open up the run game a bit this week. But it will not be Timothy Flanders at running back. He left the game against the Riders with an injury, has not been practicing fully this week, and will be replaced in the starting running back by Justin Davis, who comes off the practice roster. I just checked. He's in CFL Fantasy. He's $2,500. And to me is a very tempting value pick at $2,500 this week. If you can get a running back for $2,500 and he can even just get in for a touchdown, that's going to be worth it for you. If he can get a couple of yards, maybe he gets a couple dump passes thrown his way. At a position where, a lot of the higher priced running backs haven't been producing the point totals we want to see, it is very tempting to me to take a $2,500 Justin Davis at running back. At wide receiver, you've got your notables. RJ Harris did miss a little bit of time due to practice, but he's back in the starting lineup. Ryan Davis seems to be the second go-to guy. He comes in at $2,500. He'll be in as a starter at slot back. Again, Nate Behar and Daniel Peterman cover some Canadian slots there, and a new face in the wide receiver lineup for the Ottawa Red Blacks in Sharon Peake. Getting his first start at the wide receiver position. So a lot of young pieces, a lot of, no real breakout stars for the most part at wide receiver for the Red Blacks outside of, your RJ Harris. So who's going to be the one that steps up this season? They're going to need somebody to do it. I still like Ryan Davis as a potential value play this week at slot back. I like Justin Davis at running back, as I mentioned. And then the other notable offensively, Devontae Dedmon listed as a backup wide receiver to Ryan Davis. And he's listed as the return guy as well. So I was interested to see if he would get into more of a starting slot this week due to some of the injuries. Looks like that is not the case. He may rotate in for, a couple plays at receiver, maybe a couple runs like he did last week, but expect the bulk of his load to come from the return game this week. Also notable for the Red Blacks, looking at the defense, the defense carried the way for them in week number 1, put up a fantastic fantasy performance, and a large part of that came from two guys in the defensive backfield, and that's Abdul Kanay and Sherrod Baltimore. Both of them have been placed on the 6-game injured list this week, meaning, if you're looking at a BC offense, Michael Riley and those outstanding receivers he has, there could be some room to throw this Saturday against the Red Blacks defense. So I actually like that matchup from the BC offense perspective a lot more now, seeing those two big name players out of the lineup. Speaking of BC, let's take a look at their depth chart. Michael Riley, once again listed as the starter at quarterback, with a Q beside him on the depth chart, so he is a questionable game time decision. He's been limited in practice all week, much like the week before. I'm fairly comfortable in thinking that Riley will, in fact, start this week once again. I would be surprised if he doesn't, but hey, nothing surprises me with the way the Lions run their quarterback system and handle this anymore. So obviously stay tuned right up until the start of the game if you're thinking of putting Riley in your lineup once again. Shaq Cooper gets another start at running back. He's looking to have himself a bounce-back week after putting up just 35 yards in his debut last week. At wide receiver, all the same crew is back once again. Lucky Whitehead, Brian Burnham, Lamar Durant, who did miss a couple days of practice this week, but is still in the lineup. Dominic Grimes and Shaq Johnson at wide receiver, the same crew we're used to seeing there. Chris Rainey in the kick return, punt return duty, and I think you can always kind of expect he might roll in for a couple offensive plays as well. And then on the offensive line, looks like the Lions will be without another key piece. They're already missing Riker Matthews for another straight week, and now they're also without Joel Figueroa. So if the Ottawa defensive line can, get some pressure on Michael Riley, this is the week to do it with them missing two of their notable pieces on the offensive line, and maybe that causes some problem for the BC back offense. But I think they're going to have a pretty efficient day. They had a rough day against Edmonton. I expect them to bounce back, and with those notable pieces missing for Ottawa's secondary, I'm expecting big games from guys like Burnham and Whitehead once again this week. And then looking at the defense, nothing notable changing from last week for the BC Lions on defense. That stands out to me. Pretty much the same crew once again. Getting into the Sunday matchup between Calgary and Winnipeg. Again, no depth charts out. Those will come out Saturday, so make sure you check those out. Depending when they come out, I might have a video out. If not, I'll tweet anything notable from it at CooperTrooper42 on Twitter. But let's take a look at the injury report. And let's start with the Bombers. The big question mark is always Andrew Harris. When is he going to get back into the lineup? He has been practicing limited this week again. It looks like he's had spurts in practice where he's been performing with the first team offense. He's been definitely doing more than he has since he got injured in training camp and started getting held out of practice. So, look, Andrew Harris is, I think, close. I'm skeptical of whether he'll get in the lineup this week. I feel like, he's had some spurts with the first team offense, but then also spent a lot of the rest of the practice in kind of one-on-one work. So I could see him being another week away, but that remains to be seen once we get the depth charts tomorrow. Darvin Adams, back in the lineup last week after missing the first 2 weeks of the season. He didn't practice Wednesday. He was limited on Thursday. I would expect to see him back in the starting lineup once again this week. Nick Dembski has not practiced the last couple of days, though. He missed week number 3. And unless things change, unless he gets in a solid practice today, I would hazard a guess that Nick Dembski will be out once again this week. Drew Wolotarski missed a bit of time, but was a full participant on Thursday. Rashid Bailey's been limited with a knee injury the past couple of days. check those depth charts again on that one. I'm not 100% sure. I would expect to see Bailey in the lineup this week. He's at least been practicing a bit each and every day, which is a good sign there. And no notable injury that I was aware of coming out of that game against Toronto. That should keep him out a long time. And then on the defense for Winnipeg, Willie Jefferson, Jackson Jeffcoat, these guys have been, not practicing or limited in practice the past couple of weeks. Unless things change all of a sudden, I wouldn't put too much stock into that. Expect them to play on Sunday. Looking at the Calgary side of things, notables for Calgary, no Bo Levi Mitchell, obviously, again this week, so Jake Mayer should get the start at quarterback, although apparently Bo is getting awfully close to the being able to return, which is surprising. He just went down with broken fibula last week, but apparently there's talks he's starting to look good in his recovery and could be back in a week or two. Looking at the other notable injuries for Calgary, I believe Icambre Williams on the offensive line missed the last game. He's been a full participant in practice so far this week, so that's a good boost on the O-line for the Stampeders there. Wide receiver Josh Huff is listed on here with an illness, but has been a full participant in practice. Herji Mayala had a foot injury, limited on Wednesday, full participant on Thursday. I would expect we see both of these players out in the lineup this week. The only notable potentially starting receiver that may not be is Richie Sindani, who was limited on Wednesday and then did not practice Thursday. So he may be out this week. He's not much of a fantasy consideration, in my opinion, on any given week. So not too notable from a fantasy perspective, but it remains to be seen who gets more of a role as a starting receiver if he is not ready to go. Those are the notable injury report and depth chart updates we have so far at this point on Friday. Stay tuned again over the next day or two to see what happens with this Winnipeg and Calgary game. But in the meantime, you've got Hamilton and Montreal tonight. You've got BC and Ottawa on Saturday. So start getting those lineups set in. Start putting those pieces in there. And if you have any fantasy questions, drop them in the comments. Tweet them at me at CooperTrooper42. That's probably the better way. I'll see them sooner if you do that. But in the meantime, get those lineups set. Do all the YouTube things. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you liked, what you didn't. Thanks as always for watching, and best of luck in week number 4 of CFL Fantasy. Take care. Have a good one. Bye.